this. What is the true cost of a dream? I mean, I want you to genuinely reflect on the metaphorical price tag of your own ambitions for a second. We all have these huge things we want to achieve, right? But we so rarely calculate the upfront emotional and physical capital required to actually get there. Now for Leo, that cost was incredibly steep. He's 20 years old, living in this quiet mountain town, and his starting capital was exactly zero. Born into poverty, staring up at the stars, just kind of wondering how to even start when his family barely had enough to survive.
Section 1. Dreams are not free.
So to really understand Leo's relentless drive, you have to understand his roots. His father, Mark, worked these completely exhausting hours as a mechanic, and his mother, Claire, cleaned houses literally just to make ends meet. And then there was Sophie, his 10-year-old sister, who looked up to him as her absolute hero. Leo's ambition wasn't just about getting rich, you know? It was about survival. It was about providing a fundamentally better life for the people he loved. So watching his parents work themselves to the bone, Leo finally shares his massive dreams with his dad, and his father hits him with this foundational piece of advice. He says, "Leo, dreams are not free. If you want something, you have to fight for it." And man, that completely shifted Leo's mindset. He realized people in his town loved fresh bread but had to travel miles to get it. So he decides to strike a really risky deal with this notoriously grumpy bakery owner a few towns over named Mr. Anderson, asking for a week's worth of bread on credit to sell back home.
And this brilliantly illustrates the intense daily grind Leo committed to. I mean, he didn't just work a standard 9 to 5. His day started at 4 a.m. in the freezing cold. He walked miles on foot to Mr. Anderson's bakery, hauled all that heavy bread all the way back to his town, and spent hours just energetically selling it near the local park. At first, people were hesitant, so he gave out free samples just to prove the quality. Then, and this is key, every single evening he walked all the way back to pay Mr. Anderson to prove his trustworthiness. He did this relentlessly. 2 entire months of this, just to earn a tiny profit and save up for a small bread cart.
Let's pause the narrative right here, because this is our first major takeaway. We can call this the cost of trust. See, when Leo approached Mr. Anderson with completely empty pockets, he didn't just ask for a favor and wait for a handout. He recognized that trust isn't given, right? It is bought and paid for through exhausting, undeniable consistency. He paid that cost every single evening when he returned the money exactly as promised. That is exactly how you build a solid reputation from absolute scratch.
Section 2. The price of knowledge. Okay, so Leo is now successfully selling bread from a small cart. But one day, a customer points out an obvious truth. If he baked the bread himself, his profit margins would absolutely skyrocket. But to do that, he's got to learn a completely new skill from the ground up. Leo realizes the only person who can actually teach him is the exact man he currently buys from. So he pitches Mr. Anderson for lessons. But Anderson is understandably highly skeptical. He asks, "Why should I teach you? If you bake, you won't buy from me anymore." I mean, it's a super fair point, but Leo negotiates this beautifully. He promises he'll never forget the man who gave him his first shot, and that if he succeeds, he'll make sure to help out Anderson's bakery in the future. It was this really smart promise of mutual growth, and it actually worked. He secured himself a mentor.
But listen, securing a mentor is literally only the beginning. He was now arriving at 3 a.m., even earlier than before. He had to learn this grueling physical process of mixing and kneading until his hands physically ached. And most importantly, he failed. Like repeatedly, he felt totally defeated, turning out these horrible batches of dough that you could probably use as bricks for a new house. But he pushed through it, practicing every single step so carefully until after 2 agonizing weeks, Mr. Anderson finally handed him a perfectly baked loaf.
Let's move to and see how this builds our next big concept, the cost of growth. During that really painful learning phase, Leo sat down one day and was this close to just quitting. He thought, you know what, maybe I'm just not good enough. But he pushed past that mental block by realizing that success absolutely demands the cost of painful failure. Every single ruined batch of dough wasn't a reason to quit. Actually, it was a required payment for the skill he was desperately trying to acquire. Every single mistake taught him something new.
Section 3. Adapting to the competition.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it perfectly visualizes the shift in Leo's reality. After mastering the bake, Leo rents a small oven, gets his family pitching in, and his home bakery really starts taking off. People are loving it. But, as always in business, success attracts competition. A rival named Eric arrives in town. And just look at the stark contrast. Leo's simple, humble painted cart on the left versus Eric's big, fancy, brand new shop with all these colorful signs on the right. Immediately, the town's curiosity is captured by the shiny new thing. Leo watches his sales just drop off a cliff, and for the very first time, a real, genuine fear creeps in. He was terrified of losing absolutely everything he'd worked so hard to build.
But instead of panicking or, getting angry at his customers, Leo evolved. He went from just being a baker to being a true businessman. He went directly to his customers and straight up asked them what they liked about Eric's shop. He actually listened to their feedback. Then he dips into his savings, paints his own cart, and adds bright decorations. He starts offering free samples of new items, and this is my favorite part, he goes to the local library, watches videos on cake decoration, and teaches himself a totally new premium skill. Because of these incredibly strategic moves, he actually wins his customers back and eventually saves up enough to open his own warm, welcoming shop called Leo's Fresh Bakes.
We've got to pause again to really emphasize what made this pivot possible. Leo survived this massive competitive threat because he was willing to pay the cost of humility. When his sales tanked, his ego could have so easily made him defensive. He could have blamed the customers for being disloyal, right? But he didn't. He actively sought out critical feedback. Asking, "What can I do better?" without any ego is literally what saved his entire business.
Section 4. Rising from the Ashes.
Okay, so Leo's business is finally flourishing. His family is fully supported, his little sister Sophie is happily chatting with customers, his mom is running the accounts. The whole shebang, everything's perfect. But then, one stormy night, as Leo was closing up, he smells smoke. A fire had started right near his ovens. He desperately fought the flames and actually managed to put them out, but the damage was already done. It was devastating. Much of his precious, hard-earned equipment was just completely ruined. The next morning, the townspeople are gathered around this blackened shop whispering that, well, this was it. This was the end of the line for Leo.
Leo was absolutely heartbroken, but he remembered his own journey. He calculated his savings, realized it wasn't even close to enough to rebuild. So what does he do? He goes back to the one man who had been there from the very start. He seeks out a now-retired Mr. Anderson. And Anderson gives him this incredibly powerful reminder. He says, "Work harder, believe in yourself, and people will believe in you too." He reminded Leo that his defining trait wasn't his ovens or his recipes. It was his proven resilience. He started with literally nothing once. He could for sure do it again.
So Leo didn't wait around for a rescue. He didn't sit there complaining about how unfair it all was. He just started baking at home again with whatever tiny bits of equipment he had left. And when the town saw him physically fighting back, something beautiful happened. The community stepped up. People donated ingredients and cash. Volunteers showed up to physically clean and repair the damaged bakery. And eventually, on the day of the grand reopening, the mayor actually stood up and declared Leo a true inspiration to the town. By helping himself first, Leo inspired an entire community to rally behind him. And because of that, he rebuilt even grander than before, adding awesome new items like cupcakes to the menu.
Section 5. 4 lessons for success.
So the crucial point is, what do we actually take away from all this? How did Leo transform from a broke kid into a symbol of hope? 1. Dreams require massive hard work and sacrifice. They just aren't free. 2. Failure is absolutely not the end. It's just a chance to learn and grow stronger. 3. You got to help yourself first. When people see you putting in that maximum effort, that is when they step up to support you. And 4. Never ever give up. The darkest moments, like a literal fire destroying your life's work, are so often just the necessary catalyst right before your biggest success.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought today. What is your bakery? What is that deep, maybe even seemingly impossible dream you've been harboring in the back of your mind? And more importantly, knowing the mechanics of perseverance we've mapped out today, are you genuinely willing to pay the price? The cost of trust, the cost of growth, the cost of humility. Thank you guys so much for joining.